Okay, good evening. This is the August 3rd meeting of the Bristol Planning Commission. It is 7:01 and we will start the meeting. First item is to review the agenda and remove, add, or adjust any items. Does anybody have anything to adjust or comment on the agenda? Okay, we'll keep it intact as it is. Next order of business underneath administrative matters is the approval of the minutes from our June meeting. Entertain a motion.
Oops. Tommy on mute. Oh.
So Tom, actually, Tom made a motion to accept.
And Melissa seconds.
Melissa seconds. Is there any discussion on the minutes? Hearing none, let's call it to vote. Everybody in favor of approving the minutes, say aye or raise your hand. Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? So it's unanimous. Just to back up a little bit, Peggy, do you need a list of who's here?
Yes, please.
Okay, so at the conference room or at the town offices, we've got Chris Purley, Jeff Lundstedt, Lloyd Dyke, and myself, Kevin Hansen. Other members on Zoom are Melissa Hernandez, John Cromer, Rob Rooker, and Tom Wallace. And then we have from the community, Jim Quagliano, Ian Albinson, I guess, would be community. And we have one person on the phone, if you could identify yourself.
Hi, this is Kate Bentley from Bristol Core. I couldn't get the Zoom video to work, so I'm just calling in from my cell phone.
Okay, thank you. So that's who we've got right now, Peggy.
Thank you.
Okay. So the next item would be zoning administrator's report. If you've got anything you'd like to present, Chris.
Sure. Been busy. The DRB's had quite a few hearings in the last few months. As Peggy can attest, we were here till almost 11 o'clock last Tuesday. They've given approval to a few small subdivisions. One of the big projects that's out there that they heard the preliminary on is the 20 units that will be going in by Stony Hill Properties and Evernorth and ACCT that are working together to do next to the fire station. They had a couple conditional uses. One is for a contractor's yard down on Hewitt Road. But for the most part, it's been a pile of permits. We've got, I think, a total of 10 new homes so far. They've been permitted to be built this year in town, which is huge, and we're only in August, so.
Okay, does anybody have any questions for Chris? Thank you. Underneath miscellaneous correspondence, I did, because there was a deadline for a survey. Katie, in her capacity as regional planning, had emailed out a survey by Vermont Housing and Finance Agency, and I did pass that along. It was addressed mostly to zoning administrators and city planners, staff planners, if you will. I did fill it out, but once I started filling it out, I could see why it was addressed to those people, and I'm not sure if anybody else made the effort to do it or not. Her point was trying to keep up awareness on affordable housing, which was really the focus of that. Was there any comments or questions about that from anybody?
I did review it and go through it. I answered what I could answer, but once I got a few questions in, it was pretty much I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. So,
That
but
was,
at least I saw it and we have it. We have it, and we've got the information anyway.
thank you. It was a lot more technical than I would have anticipated based on the initial comments. Thanks. We still do have an open position. I think we should keep that in mind. I also think, and maybe hopefully I'm not speaking too far out of turn, but I would think that it would be great to focus on people or person with an agricultural background. I think we're lacking in that category, and it could be a very important aspect as we start developing things, particularly with the conservation activities and initiatives. Melissa?
Yeah, I had someone in mind, but I haven't contacted her. Should I mention here or just wait? I wanted anybody's opinion, or should I just wait to see if she's even interested?
I'd probably reach out to her, Melissa, and then have her go through the process with the select board.
Yeah,
Okay.
we don't want to drag people's names.
Right, right. And I'm sorry, I
Conjecture.
apologize. I've been swamped the last couple of weeks. I was going to contact her before the meeting, and I'm sorry, I don't know what happened, but I missed that we were having the meeting tonight and not on the 3rd Tuesday.
Okay.
So I really just ran out of time to contact her.
I'm sorry, but so the last meeting, if my recollection is right, we did decide to change to the first Tuesday. You got the agenda and all, I hope?
Yes, I got it. I got it yesterday, I think. Ian sent it. I can't remember what day that was. I think it was
Okay.
yesterday. Yeah. I'm sorry. I don't know how I missed that. I just completely missed that we did that. I
So let me
apologize.
confirm the email I'm sending you stuff. I'll send you an email to confirm it's the right one. Because I had sent out an agenda maybe a week ago or better.
Okay, I may have gotten it thinking it was minutes or something. I apologize. I apologize. So going forward, it's going to be the first Tuesdays.
Yes.
Okay, okay.
Okay. So underneath continuing business, I put in here to close discussion, I guess, if we have any post comments on the approval or the, I guess call it approval process that the regional planning went through in July, exclusive of the fire alarm activity. I don't know if there's any further comment on that, and I want to apologize to you, Lloyd, because I passed over you when we did a round table for comments at the meeting, and I apologize because I don't know how that certainly was not intentional. But
I do have one follow-up item from that. One of the comments that I brought up in question was, training related to PUD, subdivision implementation, that kind of stuff. And I think that if we could facilitate something like that, that would be very helpful for DRB and implementation of things moving forward. I think it's become clear recently that there's a bit of a disconnect between what I believe is the intention of the plan and the tools that are in there for development and the implementation of them. So I don't know if anybody else has had a different read on that or not.
The exact same read, Rob.
so the training would be for the boards, the community,
For the DRB.
for the DRB.
I reached out to Addison County Regional Planning, and I just need to coordinate now with their chair to get a training set up.
Okay.
When they do that, it might not hurt if folks from here want to also sit in So that there's an understanding of what the intent of the plan and or zoning regs were, so that there's clarity and it's not just pure conjecture. Because I think Rob's correct, what's missing was the intent of how the regs were created and how they're currently being used and implemented. Am I correct, Rob?
Yeah, I think so. I think that some of the interpretations of how tools could be used for development were maybe a little bit misguided or lacking the background of what the intention of those were.
Okay, thank you. Anything else with respect to the plan in that process?
Where do we stand now? Is it approved or does something else have to happen?
So my understanding is these two subcommittees that worked with us in July will now go to the full regional planning commission, and I'm not sure if they've had a meeting yet or not. And basically, just, present their findings, and it sounded like they would recommend approval by the entire planning commission, but that would be the next step. And then I believe it is like done.
Okay.
Is that fair?
Yeah, I believe that next meeting was the end of this month or the beginning of September, if I remember correctly. It was a little ways out.
Yeah, they meet quarterly, and I think it's a September meeting they have.
Okay. Anything, anybody else with respect to that? Okay, the next item on the agenda is the implementation tasks within the town plan, specifically that were identified as the planning commission's primary or maybe secondary involvement. Most of them were primary. Ooh, did we lose?
No, you're still good. I'm just trying to pull up the emails.
So I did take the liberty to take those tasks and as they're interrelated, or my perception of them being interrelated,
This document?
yes, grouped them, and I think there's 5, grouped them. So yeah, there's 5 groups, if you will. And the hope was it would provide a clearer guidance, I guess you could say, as to different blocks that we need to consider to work issues, if you will. The first block is tasks that are related to housing, and I again, this is just here for discussion, but if you look at housing, kind of living, if you will, included businesses, jobs, childcare, any tasks that have to do with getting around town, circulation, bikes, trucks, walking, that sort of thing. And oh, by the way, there's no particular priority in these groups. They were just the way that I started assembling them. The second group is a group of activities that are focused around conservation, risk reduction, and primarily around streams and rivers. The third group consisted of the mechanics of, excuse me, assuring the plan vision, if you will, is consistent with implementation regulations, i.e. the Unified Development Law rules. The fourth group seemed to fall together as public amenities and preservation, if you will, of open land. And the fifth group was energy conservation. So that's a very high level highlight. I'd like to open it up now for any discussion. And we can start with a raise of hands. Jeff.
Well, Kevin, thanks for doing this. It's very helpful. I did, one thing that struck me when I read through it before is that housing pops up in two different places. And well, group one is mainly housing, but it also pops up in group three, update zoning UDR regulations to allow a variety of housing types. So I'm not sure. I understand you're trying to fit things in where they go, but that's sort of straddles the two, I think.
It does. And
It's not a criticism, just a comment.
yeah, I think in my mind, I didn't really think of it at that level. I was looking at regulatory mechanics.
Yeah.
And then the vision for those regulatory mechanics would be developed in that other group
other
if we
part, yeah.
chose to work that particular
Yeah.
group.
Well, I guess if you did, if you have to conduct a housing study, so if you did a study, and then it said, we recommend we do this, that, and the other thing, then it shifts over to the other side, to the UDR.
But doesn't
Yeah.
zoning just about affect everything at some point?
Zoning is the mechanism to implement the town plan. So zoning is going to be pretty all encompassing.
Right.
There. Anybody else?
So I have another, I don't know how you were, how you're envisioning these groups, whether the thinking was that the commission would say, so we have how many members? We have 9
Well, we
members.
have 8.
We have
a board of 9.
Right, so, 2 people work on one group, 2 people work on another group. I don't know if you thought that out that far ahead, or if this is just more a general description.
My vision.
Yeah, sure. It's
So
that vision thing.
I would, somewhere along the lines, there was a discussion, and I'm fuzzy on where it was and who it was with, about we should prioritize and pick 1 or 2, as opposed to get mired into a lot of different tasks and end up not being successful with anything. One thing I did do, because when I started out with this list, I was thinking, well, there's got to be overlap, and there is to a degree, but not as much as I thought there would be with the other tasks. We as a commission certainly can figure out if we want to develop subcommittees, if we want to, as a commission, work all together on whatever the task would be. I don't have a strong opinion, or not trying to present either way.
Yeah, but you didn't have the idea that we would necessarily move simultaneously on all 5.
I think that's
overreach myself, given
I think that's
the
what we
number
aggressive.
of people and the amount of time.
And if you look at even how these things are grouped, even though they're grouped by like similarities, the effort is not consistent across the 5 groups either. For instance, that group 1 is a big chunk of work. And group 5, which is the energy plan, is pretty much just making sure it's humming along, type thing.
Yeah.
So there's inconsistency in the amount of work with each one as well. And then the other thing I didn't mention is there are some blue bars in there. So there were When there was something that I saw as a related task to one of the other tasks in the town plan assigned to somebody else, I highlighted that. And then some of the tasks as they relate to our tasks, if you will, not the entire list of recommendations that regional planning made. I tended to draw those up in a blue bar too, so they're kind of like side conversations. So I'd like to kind of go around the room and get a read on initial thoughts of the structure, if it makes sense. Is there a particular priority or priorities that we should be starting to think and discuss about? Excuse me. And just to pick on Rob, why don't you go first?
So I apologize. Did you send this out? Because I don't remember seeing this previously.
Oh, I apologize because this is the second time. So I sent out an agenda
26.
7/26, and it was attached to that email.
I must have just missed it then.
Yeah, and it was also linked. I've been trying to link docs right in the agenda as well.
Okay, I
Yeah,
apologize.
Kevin, I emailed you a little bit earlier tonight, too. I tried to open the links on the agenda, and they will not open.
So that's interesting.
So
Technology triumphs again.
Yeah, but I did also attach those docs to that email, so you could pull them up if you can find that email.
okay, I will take another look. Anyway, I think the grouping was good. It's having not had the time to go through it, my first impression is that there might be kind of higher order things within each group that would take precedent so it's hard to speak to without having gone through it. So I apologize, but it seems almost like an appropriate sort of order as they're numbered. My first impression with some of the stuff, like the housing stuff, I see as kind of something that should be addressed sooner rather than later, because seems to have been kind of kicked down the road long enough. And if we're going to do something, we should do something on it, is my feeling.
Okay, thank you. John?
Yeah, just to echo Rob's thoughts as well. I just a cursory reading of the document, the way it's set up now. It looks good. It makes sense. And you mentioned earlier one of those discussions about trying to hone in on some of the activities that we would want to attack as a commission, and housing seemed to be at the top of my list as well. I think from what I can see here, that seems to be the hot button pretty much across the board, as it should be. We've got a lot of number one, we're dealing with an aging population, so housing is going to become, and already is, an issue, especially if we're looking to get our downtown businesses to grow and to have more folks taking part in that. My thought is, more younger people, more people coming into town, they're going to need a place to live, and so that's. But I think it looks, from what I can tell here, it looks as if I think we're all on the same page there. I'm a huge advocate for doing whatever we can to support support new housing and new housing projects in the town. And that we also have to look, infrastructure as far as water, sewer, those types of things. And farther down the road, perhaps even first responders, police department, fire department, those types of things as well. But I think this is a good solid jumping off point.
Okay, thank you. Tom?
Oops, you're on mute, Tom.
Here we go. But the same thing, obviously, housing is in my bailiwick anyway, so I'm all for talking about that. I think as far as our approach to it is I think Kevin pointed it out that this is the first one, group one is going to be probably one of the larger issues that is going to take more time. So I guess I would suggest that we just go a step at a time, start with that one as a group and tackle it then.
Okay, thank you. Melissa?
Yeah, I agree. I think housing is a big issue that we need to tackle. I guess I think I've told you before, I definitely, that's something I definitely want to work on. But if we all, it might be better to attack each thing for all of us to work on one thing and then maybe split out, because housing, I mean, the number one involves a lot of issues. And then, each person can work on a particular aspect of this group one. So, yeah, housing is just as a business on Main Street to have people coming in. I can't tell you how many times a week people come in and ask me, are there any apartments around here? Is there any place I can rent? Is there some place? Because they want to move here and they might want to come in and just rent and then look to building or buying a home. So there are a lot of people asking about it that want to move to Bristol.
Okay, thank you. Lloyd?
Yeah, I think that's a pretty reasonable list of things there, and everybody seems interested in housing, and that would be big enough, so probably wouldn't have time for much else. But there could be some other things that we should work in somehow.
Okay, thanks. Jeff?
Yeah, well, everyone seems to think housing is number one, and I certainly agree. It's a hot item right now, and certainly one that's worth looking into. And I was thinking about, what does that mean? Maybe I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but if whatever item we pick, well, the first thing we do is say, what is the priority? What is the item or items that we want to work on, since we can't work on 15 priorities at once. And then we'd have to decide what information or data do we need and how would we get it, which is segueing in slightly into the next topic, but I won't jump ahead yet. Okay. And then once we get the information we need, because I don't want to operate on the basis of gut feelings, then what are the specific steps we would do? So in my head, that's how I'm thinking about this.
Okay. I think I'm lining right up with everybody else. I think, and I struggle a little bit with the updating the regulatory side, but I guess we need to understand how we want to focus housing and the associated things that are all part of that group one before we get into a regulatory update, if you will. I struggle with the zoning regs, and I keep thinking about them a lot because I was on the zoning commission for in the mid-80s for a while. And it was a zoning board, planning commission wearing the same hat, so it was a whole lot less formal, but the regulations at that point were so unworkable, they weren't followed. And today's regulations are a vast improvement over that. But I can see where there's a lot of opportunity, if you will, through zoning to focus and corral or encourage, not corral, encourage, development. But I guess I get kind of impatient with that aspect, knowing that we need to step back and do some homework, which, I think we're all discussing that aspect. Is there anybody that wants to just add any thoughts at this point?
So, I do actually.
Oh, go right ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't.
No,
I don't have a little. Should I have a little? Bio for you?
Nope. I'm just an observer sitting in the back here. The other big one that I think goes hand in hand with the actual housing aspect, which is the second option, the second thing I've listed here, which is really looking at the small and light small businesses and business in general in our community to make sure we can bring all the people we want into town, but long-term goal is really making sure that those that live here can work here has been a big focus. That goes, it's so many levels. I mean, you look at the current data, it's like 95% of the people that live in Bristol commute at least 20 miles to work. And then it's pretty bad. So trying to figure out that piece so that those, as we figure out more housing options, how do we keep those folks in our community, working in our community, spending monies in our community, and it just keeps rolling.
Yeah, and I think, and when I kind of said something about that, group one is really about living. It's the housing's the buzzword, but it's about living in. And that was one, there was a few things with the select board discussion, which was a couple months ago now. One of the comments that really struck me, you could see based on body language, not eyes, yes and no's, but based on body language, the comment was made that housing's important, but we gotta make sure we can provide jobs as much as we can effectively do that within the community too well. So that's a well taken point, I think. Any further comment?
Just to expand on that, I think this all kind of, you were mentioning, Kevin, your thoughts that perhaps the regulation side of it and stuff, I think it's too tied in to just focus on that, because in terms of businesses and needs and accommodating that as well, I think that homework needs to be done there before we can just start trying to implement any other regulatory things to facilitate that.
Well, I totally agree. I just was expressing my impatience with getting to the end result, if you will. But I totally agree, and I understand where you're coming from. Jeff and I had a discussion yesterday about the process and make sure that as we walk down this path, we are deliberate in setting up our process so that we don't end up making a wish we had not taken this shortcut or that shortcut. And Rob, that's really what you're talking about. So is it safe to summarize that we as a group want to tackle this group one, and we will further develop how the tasks may get laid out, whether we do it as a large group or subcommittees, and then start looking at all the multi-facets within this one group. Is that Is that well captured as to what the discussion was, or am I missing something?
That's good.
Okay,
Good.
yeah, Melissa?
Yes, that sounds good.
Okay,
The idea of get together and, farm out tasks and
yeah.
decide what we're gonna do.
So I guess as far as homework is concerned, if you take that sheet, I didn't hear, and I'm not trying to tap myself on the shoulder, but I'm not hearing a lot of dissatisfaction or rework of that sheet, but take that sheet and use that as a homework piece for the group 1 section to better define or develop input as to where you think that maybe can go. Thanks. So are we done with that?
Think so.
Yeah, nodding heads. So the next item of business is we had an email which was part of that package that went out. So I don't know how well it's been broadcast, but there is a series of planning grants available from the state. And the focus is, as far as the grants are concerned, they're looking for anything that's going to enhance, planning within a town or whatnot. But there's a lot of in between the lines about housing, which is a statewide issue. The grant total is the grant could be up to $22,000 if you dotted all your T's and crossed all your I's. And the really cool thing is it needs a 10% match. So even if we were to get the upset, I haven't talked specifically with Val or anything, but my understanding is, if 10% of 22,000 is $2,200, and we've got a budget that's in excess of that.
Yeah,
So-
well, in excess of that, so.
So I don't think there's nobody have to go on the street corner with a cup and pencils and sell them to make the 10%. So then the next thing that Chris is up on the screen and scroll down to is the schedule for the grant. And I was a little nervous about this at first, but then I started actually looking at the dates. And so we have until November to put in for a grant. So we've got 2 meetings and maybe some homework in between that particular time if we choose to pursue a funding source for some legwork to help us start assimilating information or developing different aspects as we work on this group. So
This is the same grant, I believe, that we got a couple of years ago to finish up the town plan as well.
okay,
I believe this looks like the same grant.
yeah, it's an annual thing. So I guess I'd like to hear a little bit of input on the thought process of working this through, how it folds into what we just got discussed as far as the implementation tasks are concerned. And just maybe figure out what an action may be if it's a couple of us starting to do some homework on developing the grant language or whatever the case may be. So we'll go around the table again for starters, and then we'll just open it up for comments. And this time we'll start with Jeff.
Well, it's a great opportunity, right? And this is what I was talking about before, is if we're going to work on a topic like housing, we need data. And if we could get a grant and then I assume hire somebody who is an expert in housing to tell us really the hard data, what is the housing situation in Bristol, and what potential steps could be taken to change it, then we'd have something to work from, rather than just off the top of our head. So to me, it seems a huge opportunity. I'm not sure how complex the grant application process is, or we would then need help in finding the right contractor to do the work, but I'm sure all those things can be taken care of. About Chris, you might know, is that a reasonable amount of money to use for something like that?
Yeah, I mean, even if you only got half of it, that's a healthy chunk of change.
You could hire somebody to do a quick survey. I mean, there was a lot of good information in the plan already. I found it fascinating, actually, about the housing stock and incomes and family size and so forth. But if we could put it together with a recommendation as to what would
Exactly.
change things around, I think that would be great. That would be, I mean, that would be, to me, that would be a huge boon to the town. As Melissa was saying, see this every day in Front Porch Forum. People are asking, anyone know a house for rent? I had owned my house 2 days when somebody knocked on my door and asked if the apartment on my carriage house was for rent. It isn't, by the way. I'm not interested in being a landlord again. But the need is obviously what strikes me is there's a huge desire to live in Bristol. I hear this over and over, especially from young people with young children. They see this as a great place to live with little kids. And I think that's terrific. And that's exactly what we need. Fight that demographic bend that we're going through. The rest of the state may lose young population, but we can gain it. What a great thing for the town if we could do that.
Yeah, I mean, the housing stock that I say all the time that we're missing. I mean, I see it on a regular basis in my office. I refer to it as starter and ender housing.
Yeah,
it's the first-time home buyer houses and folks that are trying to downsize, especially in a older village like our own, where most of the homes in the village are large homes. Family has, I use my dad as an example, spent 70 plus years living in Bristol. He now lives in Bridport because that was the only place that he could find a home that met his needs. So finding those type of homes. And again, if you're a young couple, there's no stock out there that you can afford, especially if you're walking out with $100 grand worth of college debt and just life in general. There's nothing out there for you,
yeah.
And you get stuck in the rent conundrum. So I would love to see that. I'd love to, as you said, Jeff, bringing in the proper folks that could analyze all that data. We have all this data.
Yeah.
But how do we analyze that and interpret it and meet the goals that you guys have set in the plan?
Thank you.
Lloyd.
Yeah, I guess grants are good. If you get money, you need that information to make solid decisions. And it changes all the time. So either who wants it or who has moved out or whatever. So that part is good. And what Chris said about the smaller homes, the entry homes. They're just not that profitable to make. Speculators and so maybe there's some encouragement there that could be offered.
Okay, thank you. Melissa?
Yeah, it's definitely younger people wanting to move in. But a lot of them, even with a really good job, even if they're both working, whatever, they can't afford a home, period. They don't have the money to put down on a home. So I still think we need some good rental, and not like house renting. I mean, apartments. They can be done with respect to the environment, with respect to the town. I think that's possible, but I would like to find out. And if we could get someone that's, an expert in here that can advise us, that would be, if we could get a grant and do that, that would be optimum. So it's, I mean, most of the rent, we have a few rental places and of course apartments on Main Street. But I think people would love to be able to move here, even if they rent a place, an apartment, or if there's smaller homes, if we can do actual small homes, and then move their way up into buying a home and staying in Bristol and doing that. So that's kind of my view of it.
Thank you.
Yep.
Tom,
Oops, you muted yourself. There we go.
Okay, here we go. Okay, good. Okay, I'll echo a lot of that conversation. So I see it every day as far as rentals are concerned, and for sale of homes, of course, and our inventory is so low right now that a house comes on the market, it's under contract the next day. Typically in different times, rental rates are usually at 5%. And now they're probably 1%, meaning somebody moves out in the morning and somebody else moves in the afternoon. So those are always a tough thing. The other thing is it's hard to turn down free money. I don't think many of us have talked about the trillion figure prior to a year and a half ago, but now all of a sudden we're talking about that. And maybe the wonder is where it's going to get paid off. But as far as this grant is concerned, I think information provided will help us in making decisions to try to go through group one. So I'm for it.
thank you. John?
Absolutely. I'm going to fall right in line with what everybody else has said to this point. I think it's a great idea. If we can get some free money and be able to get somebody in here who can help us organize all the information and data that we do already have. Step one and step two, advise us if we need to collect additional data that we don't already have. My feeling is we've got a lot of information out there. We just need to, be able to put it all together and get it to work for us, the most effective and efficient way possible. So, again, I'm totally on board with this.
Thank you. Rob?
Yeah, when I heard about grants, that was my first thought, was that it would be a great tool for getting a housing study done and getting that item at least off the list, being able to move that stuff forward. So I think that if we're able to, and timing works out with approval and everything, I think that next meeting we should start prepping for getting an application together. If they open up on the 1st, we can, hit that meeting with some idea of what we're going to need in order to move forward on that.
Okay, thank you. I am excited about it as well. I see it a great opportunity to look at how we're zoned, how we're trying to grow the town and do a sanity check, is if we've got the right mechanisms to do that. I'm really encouraged by some of the different comments and perspectives that don't necessarily align with my more pragmatic thoughts. So I think we've got a great start to could develop a nice little grant for ourselves. Is there any general comment based on the discussion? Anybody want to loop back with a thought?
Just one thing, Kevin,
Jeff?
I noticed that the end of this email about the grant mentions that in addition to these grants, they're developing a process to provide money to communities to use for bylaw modernization to confront housing. So that's it. They're not on there yet, but so if we can get moving, then we have a chance to get perhaps some more money to work on.
So
how-
I'm sorry.
Yeah, to how to do this.
So I clicked through a couple of the links, and a couple things that came to mind is somewhere I saw that they didn't spend their allocation last year for grants. So
Yeah, the state.
the state, so I gotta believe that we should be able to get not too hard of a job to get something. And then the other thing is they talked somewhere in there that if you had something that could be multi-phased or should be multi-phased, plan on subsequent grant applications as you go along so that you don't necessarily have to have one big bucket to do stuff. So I think as we start down this path, we might even be able to take care of some subsequent, line ourselves up for some subsequent grant money.
Yeah.
That's a good.
Maybe if I could ask a question, maybe you know the answer to this. Someone, for instance, on the Regional Planning Commission who could help us write a grant? Or would that be a reasonable way to do this? They're more experienced at this, maybe? I don't know.
It really wasn't that difficult.
Okay, never mind.
No, like I said, their leads a gear system. I mean, there's two sections. I remember there's a couple sections that Katie wrote. It's sort of the overview of like the project overview, and that's sort of really the meat and potatoes one. That's the toughest piece. But after that, we had quite a few hours into it, but it wasn't.
Okay.
It's really going through the form, and it's like, oh, let's add. We got to add this piece. So I think this group is more than capable of achieving this.
Okay.
If we were able to do it, and we did it as the planning commission.
Yeah, okay.
So.
Well, we'll
I have
take
a
a look
couple
at.
of
Go ahead.
First of all, I forgot, I'm sorry. If we get someone to come in and help with analyzing data, as John said, or doing surveys themselves or whatever, I think we also, it's also important to have either that person, or if it's an additional person, to look at how we can attract more business here, and what kind of businesses, like production, manufacturing, that kind of thing on a small scale, what would be in keeping with Bristol and what would be a good fit, and therefore what kind of businesses maybe we could actually seek out to see if we could get them to come to Bristol. So that's that part. And then the other thing was, so it looks like there's just 30 days for the application to be in, right? From September 1st through the 30th is the deadline. Should we have something additional, because we have the meeting on the 7th, and then that gives us 3.5 weeks to get it done. Should we have just a grant meeting at some point before the 7th?
So the application deadline is November 1. So
Okay, well.
there's a couple other.
Okay, I'm sorry. I read the.
I did the same thing initially.
Yeah. What's the RPC confirmation of the planning process? Oh, that means the plan has to be approved by this. Okay. I see that now. Okay. Where in bold where it says the deadline's November 1st.
Yeah, that's the one. I need to reach out to Addison County Regional to make sure that they will have had their approval meeting by this, and if not, even though it's not approved, that it's in the pipeline, would that still make us up? So I'll reach out and get clarity on that for you.
That would be great.
Thank you. I would assume that we're to the end of the line, that there would be some flexibility, but you never know. Is there any other general comments? or circling back with other comments. So I would like to propose that a couple people or somebody, a couple people get together and have prepared the narrative in a draft form for our next meeting.
Well, we can't see what it looks like until September 1st, but we need to write. Is that correct? Or you just,
We may still have, it hasn't really changed much.
okay,
You could look at historical
the
stuff.
program description. Okay, yeah.
And I think, and I used the word draft.
Sure.
I think we should be lined up for our next meeting with a narrative that makes sense, it'll fold into here, and if we've got to massage it a little bit, so be it.
I can dig out the last grant.
And there's a couple email numbers there, emails here, that I'm sure we can get some help from the department.
Yeah, they were great to work with last time.
Well, I'd be willing to work on it.
Yeah. So is there any other burning desire? So I'm, if you're agreeable, Jeff, and I'll work on it as well, and Jeff and I can
And then we'll circulate a draft.
put something together and we'll have some draft to chew on at the next meeting.
Yeah. Okay.
Is there everybody in agreement with that? Any huge, I want to get it done myself, I want to do it, or I want to do it.
Happy to have anyone else who wants to contribute.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's usually my experience in doing things like this is one pen is better to start, and then it goes around, and then we can see what people have to add in. If 2 or 3 people try and write it from the beginning, it's a little hard.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
cumbersome.
And then the other, excuse me, Melissa.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say, if you put something together and send it around, can you put it, in a document where we can edit, we can maybe make comments and then send it back to you? And
Of course.
kind of get the thing going before we get to the meeting next month.
So we'll have to look at the mechanics on how to do that.
We've done it before.
With
To
the,
work,
We can do it on Google Docs.
yeah,
Right, but I know where Kevin's issue is. There's a huge issue with open meeting laws. When you work collaboratively on a document, anything that more than that, once you have a certain threshold of your members, it has to be available to the public at all times in its working form as well. So they're working.
Google Docs would work.
What's that, Melissa?
well,
I would think Google Docs would work. You could have it.
Yeah, but you can't have it open to.
Yeah.
so perhaps the thing, because we've tried a little bit in the past, and I mean, we're already struggling with getting documents up somewhere and down, so. And if we had the thing out, maybe the best thing to do, particularly at this point, is, you collect your thoughts and then we openly discuss them at the next meeting.
Well, I don't know what exactly how this, regular open meeting thing would work. So I'm thinking out loud now. So we could do a draft. We could send it by email to everybody as a Word doc, as an attachment. Say, please send your comments back. That's not quite working collaboratively.
So if it's a one-way conversation.
Right, so they can respond. So if you send out the email and they respond just to you,
Just to me.
so you could gather all the comments and either create a synopsis of the comments or incorporate them into the edits,
Right,
whichever way works. That's fine. It's just no reply all.
right.
Reply all is where it gets dicey. I don't, what you guys are doing, none of it's nefarious. You're not making decisions. So the odds of there being extreme scrutiny, but it's easier not to have inadvertently crossed the lines if we don't have to.
Right.
But
you're
they're also
saying,
working on changing those ever since COVID hit. They realized that people are doing more remote work. We're seeing less
in-person meetings. So let me look. I have a little punch list I need you to send me we'll touch base right after this meeting.
Okay.
Stuff I need from you, and then I'll run with it
Okay,
for you.
that's fine. That's fine. And then if it turns out we can use some sharing platform, then we could do that. But for now, we can stick with edits to a Word doc.
Yeah, one to one would be,
Don't know if it would be a good idea, but if we had together to incorporate the different things, we could fit meeting or something.
we could do that.
You have the buffer.
I think, yeah, the gauge might be, that would be a September activity more than or do we want to entertain having a meeting in 2 weeks?
I think if you guys get together your first week of September,
Yeah,
have the discussion, and you may be fine. And if at that meeting you realize we got a boatload of work left, we can get together in 2 more weeks.
Yeah.
Because they're earmarked as working meetings for you. You can grab those whenever you need them.
Yeah, there's time. I don't think we need to have another meeting in August. I'm gonna be traveling and
I like that.
seeing family. And it's August.
It's the last of summer.
It's the
Okay,
end of summer. Boo-hoo.
so let me be clear, you will interface,
I'll get something and get together with you, and then
and then
we'll send it out. I'll send it out to everybody individually as an email with a Word attachment.
Yeah.
Okay?
So I think you can send it out to everybody.
Yep.
In one email.
Yeah.
Everybody that can't reply.
Don't hit
everybody
reply
else,
all.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then we will do that,
Unless you tell me that I can do otherwise.
and we will do that no later than a week before the next meeting.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that'll give everybody a week to look at it and chew on it. Will that work? I see heads nodding.
Thumbs up and heads nodding. Life is good.
Yeah, okay. Any last thoughts or comments on the grant activity? So I guess at this point, we can take public comment. There's a couple people where there's some people from the public with us tonight, if anybody wants to make a comment or statement.
Jimmy, you got anything?
Jimmy looks like he's sleeping. Okay, so I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Tom Wallace,
A second.
There we go.
John seconds. Well, I need to ask if there's any discussion. If not, everybody in favor, say aye, raise your hand. Anybody opposed? Any abstentions? So it's unanimous. Everybody wants to go home. So we took 8 minutes from you this time.
Hey, that was a lot more practical or a lot more tolerable than last meeting.
Love this. I love this group.
Great, thanks, everybody.
Good night, everyone. Take care.